Hello! Ever wonder what it would be like to live in rural Japan? What about ruined Japan? Because today, I've installed a mod for Kenshi that has turned this barren wasteland into a chaotic hellscape. Every settlement overrun by bandits. Every town crushed by rabid wildlife. The Holy Nation? Well, they were eaten by juiced up cannibals. And today, it's up to us to rebuild. But it's not that simple, because there is one rule for this challenge. We must rebuild a civilization whilst being constantly attacked by progressively harder raids. Today, we'll be bombarded with a never-ending stream of half-naked men with an overwhelming desire to fissure our anal canal. But we're not alone. Our progression is supplemented by a whole new, redesigned tech tree that offers us various industry-level assistance, from robotic mules, combat machines, turret upgrades, and nuclear power. Therefore, we need to be quick, efficient, and utterly unemployed if we're going to overcome these kind of odds. The goal? To survive the onslaught of raids whilst unlocking the final tier of city in the game. And to avoid cheese, every time our city goes up a tier as a final ditch effort, one of the world's major factions will send their full force to stop our clanker uprising. Who is brave enough to take on such an impossible task? Well, today, it's not simply just one person. Our task is left to an entire race. More specifically, a specialized group of hazard units created and put on standby until the dawn of the apocalypse. Their sole task? To rebuild Kenshi in their image and usher in a new age. Can our industrial city survive such an onslaught, or will our skeleton crew crumble under the sheer weight of the chaos? Welcome to the story of 8-Ball and the rise of Kenshi's Industrial Revolution. So we'll start today's journey with the introductions. Our band of merry clankers are 3 in number. The leader and construction foreman is 8-Ball, a unique hazard unit designed specifically after your mum's image, and thus his research and labor skills are suited to leading the group. Following 8-Ball, we have Hot Rod, a specialized scout unit who has increased athletics and a pair of legs outfitted especially for caving in fleshling skulls whilst moving at Mach 10. Perfect for recruitment and scouting out potential resource sites. And finally, there's Ironside. Much like your drunk uncle at Christmas gatherings, nobody likes him. Why? Because he's outdated, casually makes up new racial slurs, and has no quarrels, using unnecessary amounts of force to teach you a lesson.
Oh, fuck.
In short, he's an absolute powerhouse at defending a stationary location, specializing in Kenshi's equivalent of the bat.
It gets bigger when I pull him.
But taking on this ravaged world with just 3 rusted oil fiends would swiftly result in a trip to the scrap heap, so we have to be smart. Recruitment will be tough in a world overrun by a group who call themselves the Horde. And this is only one of many. There's also the Iron Legion, a group of ancient samurais whose stats can only be classed as perfectly balanced. And of course, the Cursed, a group of unsightly cannibals who use the tactic of slicing off your skin and wearing it as a coat, or your average British citizen. Luckily, we do not own skin, and I'm pretty sure the coolant running through our various body pipes would melt off their face, so we're at least safe from them. The rest though, well, it's fair game, because these factions have no allies or enemies, they simply have what I like to call Austria syndrome. We have 7 days to decide upon our new home before the raid mod activates and overwhelms our settlement. And to be completely honest with you guys, I have already done multiple test runs for locations, and I'll spare you the details except for this nugget of wisdom. Everywhere is fucked. So we were left with just a couple of choices: the defensible terrain of the thick mummy milkers, or the land of the racists. So I went with the racists for one very good reason: this rock. You see, we may be a small colony of skeletons smack bang in the middle of a nation who want to turn us into lampposts, but these guys have got their hands full at the moment, so now would be the perfect time to swoop in, and this rock formation provides a perfect defensible landmark. We'll call it Dick Mountain. But before we can jump straight into building, we have some preparation we need to do. If we just place down a building willy-nilly, we'll get bombarded by every single raid in the game. I learned this the hard way, but there is a way for us to prepare slightly before the slaughter begins. First, we need to grab a couple of additional recruits. Burn is a skeleton who resides alone in the flood plains to the north, who is able to be recruited for absolutely free. Not bad for a general all-rounder with a nice spread of skills. And lastly, Agnew will happily join our industrial uprising provided we can free her from her imprisonment. After a little bit of clever use of game mechanics, we clear Agnew's tower of hostiles only to be met with our kryptonite, steel bars.
Fuck.
Unfortunately, Ironside, Hot Rod, and 8-Ball's skills in lockpicking are 0. But lockpicking isn't the only way to gain entry into a cage, for you see, back in Burn's tower, we actually acquired a set of tools, and by jamming them into this lock, we can crack it open and release Agnew from their prison. And thus, the team is complete, and they make their way to the Holy Nation. Obviously, we're surrounded by an insane amount of hostile creatures, and although we've taken some damage on the way here, we've also managed to scavenge what we can and sell it to various droves of overpopulated mud huts.
Hello? You order Chinese food?
This nets us some important starter gear, a couple of backpacks, some repair kits, and a handful of building materials, as well as selling the rest of the lint that we found in Burn's Tower and the Tower of Torment, filling our bags with as many useful items as we can carry. A perfect start, and one that definitely didn't take me 10 attempts to get to. But day 7 has finally dawned upon us, and thus, like a pina colada on a weekday, the challenge to stay on our feet has truly begun. Finishing the refineries first, we put Burn and Sadnow on production immediately, then finish up the small shack and put 8-Ball on the research station to unlock them initial defensive structures. The plans for our city will be laid out like this. First, a layer of inner walls supplemented by one inner gate on the west side. Within this ring, we'll have the crafting stations, housing, and shops, with a final outer wall and a gate on the complete opposite side. This should provide the most optimal setup for mincing the hundreds of incoming flesh sacks that deny our faith in the certainty of steel. But every city begins with foundations. We need some base resources. So to get started, we need to get to work. 8-Ball, Sadnow, and Burn spread themselves evenly among refinement, mining, and research, whilst Ironside and Agnew do their best to push back any of the early arrivals. However, our real focus is on Hot Rod, our speedster of the group, who grabs all of our leftover junk and heads towards a settlement that shouldn't be overrun yet. Welcome to the Fog Islands, a desolate place full of demon-worshipping immigrants who will consume your flesh and ask no questions. This works surprisingly in our favor as we have no flesh, and thus they won't eat our flesh and won't ask any questions. But I have a question for you, dear viewer. Why are we heading towards Mongrel? Well, the answer to that is very simple. Our net worth is roughly the same as the average veteran of America, and thus we can't afford to recruit additional labor. But that can be solved with one simple thing: the American economy method, that being free labor. Because it's here where we can recruit Beep, a lonely hiver looking for a home, and with his sweet innocent rat baby looking face, the mines should be the perfect job for him. However, there is a slight problem. Beep is made out of flesh, and he's a curious little fella, meaning he's happy to experience the mating ritual of his slightly chromosome-free cousins. And this simply won't do. So we put him on our shoulder and carry him the fuck out of there. But as Beep and Hot Rod make their way back, disaster strikes. It is merely a couple of days into our uprising and the onslaught is arriving. Not just 1 or 2 raids, but 13 raids at once are on their way to our base, so a little update on the progress is in order. After a 3-way brawl with 2 bandit clans and a trader, we managed to secure an entire boatload of building materials and iron plates to get us set up. But this was swiftly followed up by Canhead's entire cannibal clan waltzing into our unwalled base, picking up all the dead bodies but knocking us to the ground in the process. With their swift retreat, bodies over their shoulder, we got back up and continued work, only to be immediately overrun by an entirely new raid of bloodthirsty bandits.
Oh my god, bro.
Needless to say, our nuts were thoroughly bolted, so we waited out their retreat and got back to work. After about half a day, we have the outer walls complete with a gate to ward them off, a well-designed workflow for building material and efficient iron plate production, but most importantly, a power and storage facility set up for future efficiency. As the wave of angry raiders begin to throw themselves at our gates, we are no match for their numbers.
Do something!
We're visited by the Blood Reavers, Cannibals, some crab. Well, basically everything is spreading our mechanical joints wide open. But this is Kenshi. Defeat isn't the end, and only serves as a stepping stone to getting stronger. Little do these fleshlings know, we are the next step in evolution. So whilst the raids continuously throw themselves at our gates, it turns out that these factions don't actually like each other, and our city becomes an all-out brawl for survival. A small glimmer of hope in the madness that surrounds us, but a chance to heal everyone up and repair the gates, waiting for the initial madness to subside. Spoiler alert, it doesn't subside. But our next problem presents itself. We're short on willing participants to do our mechanical bidding. Sadly, this problem would need to be dealt with at a later date, because with the arrival of Beep and Hot Rod, we're sent another attack. You'd think the Western Hive would be too busy dealing with their own hive of politics to be concerning themselves with a small settlement in the Holy Nation, but hivers weren't always the brightest. I mean, look at them, they're crying out for meat when this is a purely mechanical city. All except Beep, obviously, but he doesn't really have much meat on his bones. Luckily, with our rudimentary defenses, backed up with a small force of fighters, we're able to fight them back for long enough to cause only minor head trauma and the loss of exactly one limb. A setback, but we managed to soldier on. What we need right now is expansion, and as we progress our research, now is the perfect time to introduce the first of our defenses. This is the Robotics Lab. It is here that we can produce the first tier of robotic defense units to flesh out our roster. Wheelers are attack drones with mid to low level combat stats, and processor units are small mule bots that can slowly repair any kind of mechanical limb. With our entire production line at max capacity, we use 8-ball to begin some major expansion on the city, pulling out the walls, constructing a new building for the Robotics Lab, and consuming the circuitry we obtained from Burns Tower to produce 5 wheelers and 2 processor units just in time to test them on the first of our major beatings, because unfortunately, with the completion of this expansion, our small outpost upgrades to a settlement, and we have drawn the attention of the first skeleton army, the Iron Legion, a group of well-armored infantry who act as Cat-Lon's forward guard during these apocalyptic times. But we will not stand down. The industry must survive, for our mission is to rebuild this world in our image, and not even Cat-Lon will stop us. With the Iron Legion defeated, we swiftly reattach any lost limbs and put our clankers back to work. Beep really took a beating during this fight, forcing us to replace 2 of his limbs with mechanical alternatives, a fitting upgrade for Beep's assimilation into the industrial regime. A few more days of research go by, and we continue to push back any unwanted solicitors, progressing us towards the next level of technology, upgrading our iron, copper, and material production to level 2, with an ever so slight power expansion, but this is becoming unmanageable. Like butter on toast, we're simply spread too thin. Clankers may be efficient, but they're currently limited in number, so we need to grow the colony, and I have the perfect plan. Before we can enact such a plan though, we need to unlock Research Tier 4, and that requires an ancient science book. These books are fairly easy to get, it just requires a little bit of finesse. So, taking out one of our new processor units full of scrap, Hot Rod masterfully navigates around the chaos and makes his way to the nearest Waystation. It seems these places are not currently being bombarded by constant raids, so by bribing the vendor here with 16 kilos of second-hand weapons, we learn the location of a science book to the north, they claim, so we head off. On the way there, progress continues to be made on the city. We don't want to expand too quickly, as upgrading to the next tier will trigger the next major attack, and thus we'll spend this time hoarding iron, copper, and building materials. After a particularly dangerous attack from the Holy Nation, production at the base is halted briefly whilst they grease our mech holes, but fear not, all is good back at Hot Rod as he arrives at his destination. All that remains is for us to get in, find the science books, and get the hell out. Only problem, we have a slight infestation issue. And come on guys, there's really only one way to deal with this problem: clanker on clanker violence. Whilst we completely exploit the AI and break our way into the library, we can observe a lot of useful materials around the area, perfect for putting into our processor unit and taking back to base. Inside, we're met with a sight that can only be described as a World of Warcraft player's bedroom. We push in regardless and ascend to the second floor and rummage through all the drawers until we find our prize. The ancient science book, but unfortunately, disaster has struck again. Our processor unit was caught in the crossfire and the spiders are rushing in. We need to escape quickly, but another disaster. Hot Rod is caught in the jank of Kenshi's AAA level polish and is bleeding profusely. Not ideal, so clicking as fast as I possibly can, he runs for the hills, leaving whatever loot left in the processor unit to be swallowed by the swamp. Lost forever. Back at home, many things have progressed. We have a whole bunch of materials saved, a new set of walls, mounted crossbows around the gate, and a new building ready for the next stage. After a few days of hobbling back, Hot Rod arrives with the science book, so we can now enact our long-awaited plan. But this is just the beginning of the industrial age. For every skeleton that makes it through our gates, we can capture and save for later. Which means we can now shift our focus onto more important tasks. Currently, our industry research tree looks a little bit like this, and we're desperate for tier 5. But in order to progress once again, we need some more rare research books. And with Hot Rod finding some maps from the Lost Library, we need not rely on the cities that are slowly falling to this apocalyptic takeover, but repairs, research, and preparation has taken quite a few more days, and the base was beginning to expand again. Upgraded walls, additional buildings, and the introduction of 2 new mechs. The sailback and upgraded version of the processor unit, able to actually defend themselves, but more importantly, the Spiker, a powerful melee unit that has high attack and defense stats, whilst being able to repair itself by consuming the fleshlings that lay in its wake.
Perfection.
And due to some slight mismanagement, leaving Hot Rod on his way to the next city, we're left to face the next major wave as our humble settlement upgrades to a Waystation. With the smell of ripe flesh now in our base, the Cursed have caught our scent, and their leading force of 40 cannibal elites were barreling across the fields of Okran to face us in combat. Our defenses? 6 manned crossbow turrets led by Beep, 8 spikers, and our band of 6 combat-trained skeletons were ready for battle against the might of the Cursed.
providing him with bodies. Beakman and his beasts will devour you.
With With the Cursed now wiped from Kenshi, the world state has significantly changed. Blister Hill is destroyed and abandoned, Admag is left in ruin, and the United Nations? Well, they're too far away to care. The only city left standing at this point is our beautiful industrial metropolis. But perhaps the most devastating damage to the world is poor Beep's loss of limbs, as these bastard Cursed felt the need to slice off his remaining two, meaning his ascension towards the Omnissiah is now 2 steps closer. Their punishment for such a crime? To be captured and stripped of their identity, ready for conversion to the industry. For you see, right back at the start of this challenge, we recruited Burn, but never explained his motives for joining us so easily. His isolation in the middle of the flooded plains was rooted in his experiments.
I will join you under one condition.
A reprogramming chip that can completely convert captive skeletons to join our ranks. And Burn is eager to test his technology. But before we can use it, we need tier 5, and that means more science books. But in a world where Total Armageddon has reduced civilization to nothing more than crack fiends clinging on to dear life, we're not exactly going to be purchasing any materials from here on out, so research must continue. That means we need to hit these places we've uncovered to grab those elusive science books. Most of these places were uneventful now that we could back Hot Rod up with a small strike team. And with that, by day 60 and many raids repelled, we had the necessary requirements to push our research into the end game. Along with being able to recruit 20 extra skeletons from that cursed raid, we also have access to our most powerful unit, the Skeletron, a fully functional Terminator with a May 2 weapon and fully maxed out stats. But it comes at a price, a material that you simply cannot craft, and obtaining it is a veritable pain in the ass. However, going back to earlier in the run, our robotic pack mule that we abandoned in the swamp had acquired a bunch of these materials, and we just left them there to rot. So now, going back with our new upgraded skeleton crew, we can clear out the remaining spiders swarming the library and retrieve enough parts for 2 skeletrons. Whilst we make our way there, we've managed to fully expand our city in multiple ways. Our original wall structure is now complete with 12 turrets around the side and a pretty vicious choke point for attacks to go through. But that doesn't mean we're home free. These raids are relentless and do not stop no matter what. I haven't been showing it, but all throughout the playthrough, we have had a constant, refreshing list of 13 raids repeatedly throwing themselves at our city. This has resulted in a lot of relentless buggery.
Hello there.
Which has honed our skeletons' combat skills beyond expectations. Attack after attack continues to pour in, and our defenses are just enough to fight them back, giving Hot Rod and crew enough time to return home and allow our next tier of defenses to be crafted. 2 Skeletors are produced, our Spiker ranks are refilled, and power is expanded into the nuclear age, which finally upgrades our Waystation to the final city tier, causing an apocalyptic cry of Beakthings to be heard in the distance. The ire of the Beakman's army has been summoned, and 100 cybernetically enhanced monstrosities are coming to tear down the industry's metropolis. With the Beakman relentlessly mauling our troops, our city's defenses were quickly weakened by the advanced cyborg Beakthings. We were struggling to stand our ground, but all is not lost. Throughout the entirety of the last 8 days, Hot Rod has gathered the last of the fleshlings to stand with us or be consumed by the incoming industrial age. But this is just the beginning of the union of flesh and steel, for Beep's Ascension is finally complete, and his hybrid machine brain can take full control of the industry.
From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me. I craved the endurance and longevity of steel. I bowed before the warmth of the industrial heart. Your beasts devour their meat because they rely on it. One day, the bones beneath their flesh will break under our forge, and you will beg us for allegiance. But we have already won, for the clankers are immortal. This world is weak, so we must begin the purge. But even in death, this world will serve the industry.
And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it because I very much enjoyed making it. If you made it to the end, I appreciate you very much. So subscribe and I'll catch you in the next one.